The night his 50-year-old neighbor said, "If you want to see, just ask," Daniel felt his breath lock in his chest, as if someone had suddenly tightened a wire around his ribs. The words weren't flirtatious, not even playful. They were quiet, steady, and strangely gentle. But to Daniel, standing barefoot in the dim hallway of his apartment building, they landed like a thunderclap. His heart hammered, his palms went damp, and for a moment he forgot how to speak. Daniel was 23, newly moved into the building, and still carrying the invisible weight of a childhood that had taught him to stay small, to not draw attention, to never ask for anything that might be denied. His neighbor, Elena Morozova, had moved in 2 months before him. She was 50, with silver threading her dark hair, a calm dignity in her posture, and eyes that seemed to see straight through polite masks. She worked from home, spoke little to anyone in the building, and yet somehow always remembered Daniel's name. They'd met first in the elevator, when he was struggling with grocery bags and she wordlessly held the door. Then in the laundry room, when his dryer broke and she let him use hers. Small moments. Kind moments, safe moments, but also moments that unsettled him, because no one in his life had ever offered kindness without strings attached. On this particular evening, Daniel had knocked on her door to return a book she had lent him. It was an old photo album, filled with black and white pictures of a distant village, a smiling young woman who looked like Eleanor, and people he didn't know but felt strangely connected to. He had flipped through it carefully, afraid to crease a page, afraid to be caught lingering too long over her past. When she opened the door, she smiled faintly. "Did you like it?" she asked. "Yes," he said too quickly. "It was beautiful." She nodded, took the album, and hesitated. "If you want to see, just ask," she said. "I have more." And that was it. No dramatic pause. No suggestive tone. Just an invitation to learn more about her story. But Daniel froze. Because just ask had never been an option in his life. He grew up with a father who drank and a mother who stayed silent, teaching Daniel through her endurance that needs were dangerous things. Asking for help led to shouting. Asking for affection led to disappointment. Asking for answers led to punishments. So Daniel learned to swallow his questions, to nod and say, "It's fine," even when it wasn't, to carry his loneliness like a secret injury. Standing there in Eleanor's doorway, he felt all of that rise up inside him. His throat tightened. His mouth opened, then closed again. He nodded awkwardly and stepped back. "Maybe another time," he muttered. He walked back to his apartment, heart pounding, ashamed of himself for yet again missing a moment of connection. That night, he couldn't sleep. He lay staring at the ceiling, replaying her words again and again. "If you want to see, just ask." It sounded so simple, so easy, and yet it felt impossible. Over the next few weeks, Daniel avoided Eleanor. He took the stairs instead of the elevator. Did his laundry late at night. Left his apartment at odd hours. He told himself he was just busy, but the truth was uglier. He was afraid. Afraid that if he asked, she'd regret offering. Afraid that if he opened himself up, something would go wrong. Afraid that kindness would turn into disappointment, as it always had before. But loneliness has a way of catching up to you. One evening, after a brutal day at his job at a call center where customers shouted at him and supervisors ignored him, Daniel found himself sitting on the floor of his kitchen, staring at nothing. The silence in his apartment pressed down on him. His phone buzzed with a notification from his mother, a single-line message asking if he'd sent money yet. Something inside him cracked. He thought about Eleanor's quiet smile. Her steady eyes. The album. The warmth he'd felt in her presence, even as he'd pulled away. He stood up, his hands shaking, and walked into the hallway. Her door was closed. A soft yellow light glowed from underneath it. Daniel raised his hand to knock. He froze. His heart thudded in his ears. His mind filled with excuses. "It's too late. She's busy. She won't remember what she said. You're bothering her." He almost turned away. Then he whispered, barely audible, "Just ask." And he knocked. The door opened after a few seconds. Eleanor looked surprised, then softly relieved. "Daniel, his voice caught. He swallowed. "You said, if I wanted to see, just ask." She smiled. Not wide, not dramatic, just warm. "Come in." Her apartment smelled faintly of tea and old books. Shelves lined the walls, filled with albums, framed photos, and small souvenirs. She gestured to a couch, and he sat stiffly, his knees bouncing. She brought out another album, thicker than the first. "This one is from when I moved here," she said. "And before that." They sat side by side, turning pages. She pointed out faces, told stories about her parents, her first job, the husband she'd lost to cancer 10 years ago. Her voice didn't waver, but there was a quiet sadness in it, a strength that had been forged through loss. Daniel listened, at first politely, then hungrily. No one had ever trusted him with their story like this. When she paused, he surprised himself by speaking. "My dad used to drink," he said quietly. "A lot." She turned to him, her eyes gentle. "I learned to stay invisible," he continued. It felt safer. Asking for things always made things worse. She nodded slowly. "That sounds very lonely." The simple validation hit him harder than he expected. His eyes stung. They didn't fix each other that night. There were no dramatic confessions or instant healing. But something shifted. Over the next months, Daniel and Eleanor formed an unlikely friendship. They drank tea together, walked in the park, shared stories. Sometimes they sat in silence, and Daniel learned that silence didn't have to mean rejection. But the challenges didn't disappear. Daniel still struggled to speak up at work. He still felt panic when his mother demanded money he didn't have. He still flinched when people raised their voices. And Eleanor had her own battles. Some days her grief overwhelmed her. Some nights she couldn't sleep. Sometimes she pushed Daniel away, afraid of becoming too dependent on him. They argued once, after Daniel cancelled plans without explanation. Eleanor told him, gently but firmly, "You disappear when things get hard. It hurts." Daniel wanted to run. Instead, trembling, he said, "I'm scared of being a burden." She took his hand. "You're not." It didn't cure him, but it gave him a place to start. Slowly, Daniel began practicing something terrifying, asking. He asked his supervisor for a different shift. He asked a coworker to have coffee. He asked his mother to give him time instead of money. He asked Eleanor when he needed support, and told her when he needed space. Not everyone responded kindly. Some people dismissed him. Some ignored him. Some took advantage. But some said yes. And that changed everything. A year later, Daniel stood in the hallway again, outside Eleanor's door. This time, he wasn't frozen. He knocked easily. She opened the door, smiling. "I got into a training program," he said. "For a better job." Her eyes lit up. "I knew you would." He hesitated, then added, "Thank you for telling me to just ask." She laughed softly. "You did the hard part." That night, as he walked back to his apartment, Daniel realized something simple and powerful. The world hadn't changed. People were still unpredictable. Pain still existed. Loss still lingered. But he had changed. He was no longer the boy who stayed invisible, who swallowed his needs, who believed he didn't deserve kindness. He was a man who had learned that asking didn't guarantee safety, but it made connection possible. And sometimes, all it took to change a life was someone saying, "If you want to see, just ask," and the courage to finally knock.